and welcome. And we're glad you are here. I know this is a critical and important topic that a lot of us are worried about, concerned about, needing to know about. So we appreciate your being here. Even more than that, well, no, I shouldn't say even more than that. Equal to that, we appreciate our speaker being here today, and it's my privilege and pleasure to introduce Ed Gussio from Benefit Logic. He has graciously agreed to come and give us an update on this very critical topic. He has spoken a couple of times over the last couple of years as this particular piece of legislation has weaseled its way into our lives and created a few headaches for us. So he has agreed once again to come in and help us out and present some information to make sure that we're all on track with where this piece of legislation is going. Nothing gives Ed more satisfaction than helping a person or a business or your fire districts identify creative solutions to help them improve their employee benefit plan and to save money. Ed started Benefit Logic, his company, in 1997, immediately following a leadership position with a prominent Arizona health insurance company. And since then, Benefit Logic has grown to become one of Arizona's leading employee benefit and individual health insurance consultants. Many of you in this room, I know, use Benefit Logic. Many of our district members do as well. As a respected consultant with more than 20 years of experience, Ed has participated on advisory councils with many leading insurance companies, including Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona, HealthNet of Arizona, Assurant Employee Benefits, and Delta Dental of Arizona. When Ed is not trying to figure out the affordability aspect of the Affordable Care Act, he enjoys snowboarding, golfing, hiking, and camping with his wife and 2 children. In addition, he's on the board of managers for the Flagstaff Family YMCA. So please join me today in welcoming Ed Gussio.
All right, so just to check again, you guys can all hear me okay? I'm gonna try and utilize the technology as good as I can. So thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to be here. Just real quick, my team is here as well, Brandon Billings and Maria Gillespie, so please stop by and say hi at our booth. Everything kind of works better with the team. Real quick disclaimer, I am an insurance person. I help people find insurance. We're insurance brokers, we're independent. We work with every carrier in the state, but I'm not a lawyer. Donna Versa, she's not here. She'd remind me, yes, I do, you're not a lawyer. So really, I'm gonna help guide you through some really good aspects of the law, but it's very important for you to take a grain of salt and remember, this is a law, and therefore you should have legal counsel. I like to remind everybody what an insurance person is. And I just take 1 second and I'll bring something up here.
Phil? Hey, Phil? Phil Connors? Phil Connors, I thought that was you.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for watching.
Hey. Now, don't you tell me you don't remember me, because I sure as heck fire remember you.
Not a chance.
Ned! Ryerson! Needle-nosed Ned the head? Come on, buddy. Case Western High. Ned Ryerson, I did the whistling belly button trick at the high school talent show. Bing! Ned Ryerson got the shingles real bad senior year, almost didn't graduate. Bing! Again! Ned Ryerson, I dated your sister Mary Pat a couple times till you told me not to anymore. Well?
Ned Ryerson?
Bing!
Bing! So did you turn pro with that belly button thing, Ned, or?
No, Phil, I sell insurance.
What a shock.
Do you have life insurance? Because if you do, you could always use a little more. Am I right or am I right or am I right? Right.
Ned, I would love to stand here and talk with you, but I'm not going to.
Hey, that's all right. I'll walk with you. Whenever I see an opportunity now, I charge it like a bull. Ned the bull, that's me now. I got friends of mine who live and die by the actuarial tables, and I say, hey, it's all one big crapshoot anywho. Tell me, have you ever heard of single premium life? Because I think that really could be the ticket for you. Oh, God! It is so good to see you. What are you doing for dinner?
Something else. It's been great seeing you. Yeah. Take care.
Watch out for that first step. It's a doozy.
All right. So.
Sign me up.
So bear with me for 1 second while I navigate this technology here. All right, back in action. So, insurance people, we all have a bad name, and so that's one of my favorites. It's from Groundhog Day. If you haven't seen that movie, he repeatedly runs into Ned, and it gets even funnier. But anyways, that's the team at Benefit Logic. We truly are a team. We work together for our clients. We've been in business since '97. We have an office headquartered in Flagstaff. We also have a small office in Glendale. We do employee benefits and offer some, we think, some pretty unique advantages. And we've worked with fire districts for quite a long time. There we go. So we're going to go through some aspects of the Affordable Care Act that have changed. In particular, things that have changed as it impacts employee benefit plans. So not necessarily the individual aspect. I am going to cover a few things there, but we're going to go through some terms. What's the definition of a small group, which changed in October? Cadillac tax delay, the pay-or-play penalty update. Somebody had emailed and asked us to retouch on how the Affordable Care Act impacts volunteer as well as reserve firefighters. We're going to go through some ACA reporting updates. That's constantly changing, but it's very important. Automatic enrollment update, talk about grandmother individual plans, and more. So bear with me, and we will hopefully, it'll be good. So I think the insurance industry, amongst many, really has a lot of acronyms. So just a few that I'm going to be touching on today and using are AILs. So not what you've been getting down there at the Oasis bar. All right, those are different. An AIL is an applicable large employer, and as the Affordable Care Act defines it, an employer that has 50 or more full-time and full-time equivalents. I'm going to go through that in more detail as well. And the definition of a full-time equivalent is either somebody working 30 hours or more, or 130 hours a month, and then you add, essentially everybody pays more. Well, you don't want to be put in a situation where you're saying, hey Ed, we're going to pay your Medicare supplement and your Part D so you come off of the group plan so we can get lower rates. I think it's real important for them to know the differences, because in some cases it makes a lot of sense for them to go on to their Medicare, their Part B, get a Part D, get a supplement, and they're happy as clams. They get access to more providers, and there's lots of reasons to do that. But you don't want to be ever looked upon as, hey, that was an incentive, or we encouraged it because of age discrimination. Legally, I'm not sure about the tax part of it. All right. PCORI fee, that's the patient-centered outcome research fee that they have that fancy new logo for. That fee is actually going up from $208 to $217. The transitional reinsurance fee is the one going down from 44 to 27. BBs are belly buttons. All right, some important dates to remember. The reinsurance payment, if you have to pay the fee, is due yesterday, today. And that's for your coverage for 2015. The 1095B, 1095Cs is March 31st. The IRS report is May 31st or June 30th if done electronically. The PCORI fee is due in July, because the government would definitely not want to make it all the same date, because that would make it a little bit easier for all of us, right? We want to scatter it around throughout the year to thoroughly confuse us. There is this thing called a Medicare Part D credibility notice that you should be providing to your employees in October. That just states whether your plan is meets the minimum requirements for prescription drugs. And if you have an HSA plan, it does not, which is fine. Just, you have to tell whether it does or not, so they know how to pay it, whether pay the claims. And then the reinsurance fee deadline for reporting for the reinsurance is November 15th. I have not heard of any penalty for not doing it by November 15th, because last year was the first year, and then this year, it's just important to pay it on time. But theoretically, you're supposed to report in November, and then you pay it in January.
Okay, I don't really quite understand what the reinsurance fee is for. And is there a form that you're supposed to fill out? And where do you send it?
You usually do it through pay.gov. And I have some information over here I'd be happy to give to you.
Okay.
What it's for, the transitional reinsurance fee, is kind of like we're all paying into this bank account, and then we're going to be distributing the money in the bank account to the insurance company that lose the most money in the individual marketplace.
Okay, I have another question. What's the PACA fee?
The what?
PACA.
PPACA fee? Well, that's the ACA fee. That's that's kind of a big term. There's lots of fees. All of these could be considered PPACA fees, but there are certain PPACA fees that just apply to insurers.
Okay, so we're being charged that, and it's
Yeah.
based on employee independent coverage, max family.
Correct. Or belly button.
Okay, and then I understood that EMI would be providing us that information. They're collecting it throughout the year, but I don't really understand anything beyond that.
Okay. They're going to be providing you with the information to file the reports, and if they're escrowing that money, then they'll provide you a check so you know what to pay.
Okay, and when is that due?
So, I think you're referencing the PCORI,
Maybe.
but we can talk.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
Do you think it's the reinsurance?
I think that's what it might be, but I can't say for sure. I don't have the bill in front of me, but.
Okay.
And the rate varies. It's a
Based-
variable rate. So let's say, for example, employee-only coverage would be an additional $3.57 a month. Employee and spouse would be like $7 and something a month.
Because it's per belly button.
Okay, so is that,
Both of them are per belly button.
okay, but is that what I'm talking about?
I
then?
think you're talking about this one here.
Okay,
But we'll be happy to talk to you about it.
okay.
Yeah. Great questions. Aren't you glad you stuck around till the last day?
Yeah.
I think they're gonna have caffeine and sugar out there, so there's light at the end of the tunnel. All right. Well, speaking of the end of the tunnel, I think that's all I've got prepared. I don't know how we did on time. I am happy to stick around and answer any questions. I definitely don't have all the answers. I do have some very good documents over there that I'm happy to give away. If you have a question on parts of the law that I can't answer. Again, thanks for sticking with me, staying awake, and I hope to meet you someday. Thanks.
I have questions.
Taxes? You don't file taxes? Then just stick it in your filing cabinet. Yeah. Just in case you ever are asked to, just in case you ever need it. Just like any other tax.
Okay, so this stuff is kind of great to me. And he might just go learning as okay. So I don't always read it, to be honest with you. So when I started reading it, and then I was saying, well, are we really considered self-insured? So they provide the names of companies because they're not legally able to give us.
Oh, to provide this, to do this for you?
No, yeah, to do it and to
Yeah.
ask questions,
Yeah.
right? So I called the company and say, okay, so what do you do? What do I do? And so on and so on. I said, okay, well, I have questions. And I started asking my questions. One, are we considered self-insured? And if so, explain to me why, because we ourselves are not funding the self-insured, we're going through the companies. Okay, and so they could answer that for me. And then I said, I wanted to understand the full-time equivalent. So we have our career firefighters, working right now, that are on the insurance. And it's only offered to career firefighters and administration. Okay, we have positions that the board has not let us fill. So they're open positions, and we use part-time guys from other agencies.
Add in the part-time employees who are working up to 120 hours. And you kind of add up all their hours and divide by the number of part-timers to get the equivalent part of that. And then SIC code, I'm sure you all are very familiar with that, but that's a classification that insurance companies use to rate businesses. All right. So, definition of small group. Everybody has a different idea of what a large group and a small group is, but in Arizona, it's always kind of been 50 or more was considered the large group market. And of course, the Affordable Care Act impacted the whole country. So in other areas, 50 was considered maybe 75 or 100 was considered small group. Well, the Affordable Care Act kind of consolidated everything and set certain definitions. But what that did, the reason why that was so critical, is that small group had to be rated like individuals. All right. So basically, if any of you have a smaller district, at one point you may have seen individual rates for all of your employees. And then they changed it to back to composite rating. Well, on October 7th, President Obama signed the PACE Act to repeal this, and then actually gave the decision to the states, which was really good, and especially good for Arizona, in my opinion. So Arizona did not expand the definition of small group to 100, and I'm going to go through some ways that was beneficial. Small groups are rated very specifically, like individually rated by just geography, where you live, zip code, and age of an employee or of your employees. Gender is not taken into consideration. A large group is still age-based, but they also throw in experience, so claims experience, gender, SIC code, and overall employer size. In the small group market, there's very little room for tweaking any of those things, for the insurance company to tweak how they rate you. On the larger group side, there is some flexibility, which I'm sure some of you have appreciated over the years. So if you think about it, for fire departments and fire districts, traditionally have a much larger percentage of males to females. And with the insurance business, that's always been looked upon as favorably. Fire districts sometimes enjoy better rates than school districts, which are the complete opposite. And the normal course of a career for, as you know, for firefighters is they're usually coming in young, right out of school. So the average age is a little bit younger than normal in most other populations. So overall, by Arizona keeping the definition of a small group 50 and under, it was beneficial, especially to those mid-sized groups, 50 to 100. Okay, I'm actually completely fine with questions during. If you guys see something that you have a thought or concern on, please feel free to just, ask away. I'm happy to answer them. Just recently, the Cadillac tax was delayed. So I'm not sure if you remember how this law worked, but this is a real quick a reminder. It was originally scheduled to begin in January of 2018. It's a 40% excess tax on premiums above a certain threshold. Arizona, I think, has traditionally pretty low premiums. And I know you'll all throw a shoe at me and say, no, we do not have low premiums. But if you are coming from Chicago or New York or some other places in the Midwest, our rates aren't not too bad. We've enjoyed very good competition. And some of the other markets don't have quite as much competition. But this was a tax that was kind of always looming on the horizon, and it was just recently delayed. So on December 18th, believe it or not, in Washington, D.C., they were very busy in the month of December, as you'll see. They signed into law to delay the Cadillac tax 2 more years. So it goes until 2020. It imposed a 1-year moratorium on the collection of the ACA's health insurance provider fee for 2017, which doesn't impact employers. And then a 2-year moratorium on the ACA's medical device tax, which was, I'm sure, lobbied heavily by those folks. But the good news is the Cadillac tax. And why is that so important for you guys? Well, 2 things. When this law was first passed and you looked at the thresholds for the Cadillac tax, like, wow, we'll never get to $850 a month premiums. We're slowly getting there. I'm sure some of you agree that the premiums have really risen. They did put together special limits for high-risk professions, which fire departments and fire districts qualify for, so they're able to stay away from that threshold a little bit easier. But the buzz in the industry is eventually, unfortunately, this law would impact quite a few employers, especially union employee benefit plans. So, in any case, the can has been kicked down the road to the future, and we'll have to see what happens. All right. So, the employer mandate. What's changed with that? Well, the applicable large employers. We talked about the ALs. Those are employers with 50 or more full-time and full-time equivalents. Now they have to comply starting this month, in January this year, 2016. Those with 100 plus full-time equivalents had to comply last year, or else there's the penalty. We all know about the individual mandate penalty. Well, there's a penalty for employers as well. So we've seen some, some not necessarily fire districts, but other businesses kind of come in and say, we need to get quotes, we need to get insured, or get quotes so we can see which is better, to pay the penalty or to provide insurance. When employers are thinking about the pay-or-play penalty and the mandate, the hours of service rules, and this is something else that's been debated quite a bit. The Affordable Care Act defines a full-time employee as anyone working 30 more hours a week, or 130 hours a month. But you have to look at 2 types of hours. Working hours, those are normal hours when somebody's present for work, as well as non-working hours. So each hour for which an employee is paid or entitled to payment during which no duties are performed. For example, vacation, sick leave, holiday. So you got to look at not just how many hours somebody clocks in and out every week or each month. You kind of have to look at the greater picture of the hours that they were even eligible for or getting paid for. All right. So February 2014, so almost a year, there was a special bulletin that went out that changed the way the Affordable Care Act works for volunteer firefighters. And it said true volunteer firefighters, emergency medical personnel, it excluded them from the count when determining full-time equivalent employees. There were fire departments across the country that were saying, look, we're heavily relying upon volunteer staff. And if we have to provide insurance to these folks, we'll be out of business. This is how we survive. And just like all aspects of a law that if you look at it, we've got it printed up, it's about this big. They didn't know the true ramifications of every aspect of the law. So this is what they've done. They've set aside special rules, not just for firefighters, but they have a separate rule for adjunct professors and many different types of industries. So, but reserve paid firefighters, on the other hand, do count towards the numbers when you're calculating the pay or play penalty. Okay? I think there's one more slide on this. And this is just kind of the definition that I think I pulled out of some IRS thing. Reserve personnel typically do not have definitive schedules, so they're done on an as-needed basis. And there is, I don't want to say a loophole, but there is a way to use a means of calculating full-time employees using a variable hour classification. So when you don't know how many hours per week or per month somebody's going to put in, you can actually look at them over the course of a year and determine on a look-back provision whether or not they actually are a full-time employee. So that's a strategy. That's something that if you have quite a few reserve employees or a few, you may want to consider using. I'm not going to go into variable hour employees because I don't have any more videos, and I guarantee you it puts you to sleep. But if you are interested in any of this, any deeper details on any of these topics, please send me an email. I'm more than happy to send you a short white paper on how it works.
While you're on reserve,
Yes.
do reserves still operate under that 30 hours a week? Even though firefighters normally work more than a 30-hour week?
Sure. So then you can use the 130 hours a month.
130 hours a month. And
It's
yet firefighters are typically about 216 hours.
Yeah, so they'd be full time. That's just the rule. There's no way around it. All right, so 6055 and 6056 reporting. This is going to get really boring really quick, you guys. But let me tell you, it's a report that is going to impact some fire districts, many fire districts, and it's has some very important rules, and I'm going to hopefully go through it and help you understand whether or not you need to comply with it. As I mentioned before, Washington, D.C. was not on vacation during the Christmas holiday. On December 28th, the IRS issued a notice to delay some of the due dates for the filing of these forms that I'm going to go over with you. I was at a meeting on Wednesday with a select group of brokers. Humana invited some brokers in to kind of talk about this and what's going on, how our customers are dealing with the Affordable Care Act, and then how we're helping them deal with it. And don't hold this to me, but there's Humana, it's a giant company, said that there might be guidance saying that these reports could be delayed a whole year. So, we've been going through the Affordable Care Act for, since 2010 really, but it really kind of kicked it full steam in 2013. And it's not uncommon for these things to happen last minute. So, anyways, as of right now, the due date for furnishing these forms to individuals has been extended to March 31st, and for filing the forms to the IRS until June 30th. Oh, May 31st if you're doing it traditionally, and June 30th if you're doing it electronically. So what are these forms and what do they mean? Well, remember the individual mandate? These are the forms, so these are the reports that kind of give the IRS the power to enforce the individual mandate for those who are getting in coverage through their employer, and the pay or play penalty for those employers that are not providing insurance. So this is kind of the checks and balances, if you will, of the Affordable Care Act. And that's a lot of paper going to people and going to the IRS. So I'm surprised they're ready, but in any case, it's happening.
Is the IRS equipped to handle all this stuff?
No.
Yeah, I'd probably say no. The other thing that's interesting about this is that this bullet says promote transparency with respect to plan coverage and costs. Because when people receive, a lot of people don't recognize how much insurance actually is. They only recognize how much is coming out of their check. So when they're reporting these things to either the insurance company or whether an employer is reporting this to the individual, they're gonna see the total cost. So that's the transparency aspect of it. And I'm gonna back up on that total cost, because I'm not going into every minutia detail of this. Again, I have it, I'm happy to answer any question on it, but it's they're reporting the cost of the lowest cost option. Okay, so that's important also. So here's I've got several what I call quick summary slides on this, but section 6055 it applies to organizations providing minimum essential coverage, okay, MEC. It's the report that goes filed with the IRS and provides statements to individuals. They're supposed to provide this with their tax forms. Those are forms 1094B and 1095B, and the purpose of that is for the individual mandate, proving that you do have coverage, right, that you're in compliance with the law. Section 656 applies to applicable large employers. Now we talked just briefly about the fact that employers with 50 or more don't have to comply until this year, because that was delayed too, so this year. But even employers with 50 employees that does not provide insurance, even if they're not out of compliance, they still have to file this report. How many of you think they're going to do it if they're not even offering the insurance? So they have to provide a file with the IRS, and that's to administer the employer shared responsibility rules. All right. So this is good. This is a small cheat sheet. I got one more coming. If you're a small employer, and that's the definition of under 50 full-time employees and equivalents, and you have a insured plan, and I'll further define that as a fully insured plan, meaning it's not partially self-funded, it's not self-funded, it's just you pay the insurance company and you're good. You don't have to do anything. The insurance company is going to take care of that for you. If you're a small employer and you have a self-insured plan, if it's partially self-funded, maybe through EMI, APEP, Starmark, offer programs like this that are partially self-funded, you might have some responsibilities here. So it's good for you to check with your broker, check with your insurance company, and find out if you have to do 1094B and 1095B. There are parts of the law that say that third-party administrators could file these for you. You just have to determine whether they're doing it or not. An ALE, for the purpose of the slide, are those employers with 50 or more. They do have to provide, and they have an insured plan. They have to do this section 6056. And that's when they have to provide the information about coverage to all full-time employees, and the forms down there below, 1094C, 1095C, parts 1 and 2. And if you're a large employer and you're self-funded, you have to provide everything. Not only do you have to provide information about coverage of your employees, but also dependents, the cost, and basically the full boat report. I do have copies of that if you're interested. I did not provide it in here. Yes?
On the reporting for small employers, we're with EMI.
Okay.
Okay, so are we also reporting dependents?
Small, no.
Okay, just employees only?
Correct. EMI does a thing where they will collect your fees, especially like the P Quarry fee, which I'm going to get into.
Which, yeah, they do.
So here's another roadmap. I like this one a little bit. Am I an AL, large or small? If no, is my plan self-insured? If no, then you're good. If it is self-insured, then you have your reports down there. If you're over 50, then you need to file forms 1094C and 1095C. So now, as I mentioned, extensions are available. They've also issued guidance, the IRS. I mean, they're usually the, lay down the law and let's get the fines and the penalties going. And I took out the slides about the fines and penalties. which there are if you do not provide these, by the way. I'm not a big person in terms of, saying how much it's gonna cost you, but there are penalties for non-compliance. But they did say, as long as you're making a good faith effort to comply, and you goof up, which this is the first year these have been due, so it's very possible that many of us will goof up, they're being very lenient. So that what you're reporting on, the reports that are due in 2016 are for coverage that you provided in 2015. So it's a look back. The IRS returns, this is just kind of a duplication of the deadlines. And again, the notice that extended the report that goes to the IRS to May 31st. And the individual statements have been delayed, can be delayed up to March 31st. Most employers, if you're in the boat where you have to provide these, I would recommend getting them out. And it's essentially, it's a form that you're going to send out to all your employees that you've offered coverage to. Just like you would send out a W-2. The original guidance was to send them out with your W-2s. The IRS returns, that's May 31st. The insurance companies are most likely going to be sending you the information that you can use to complete these reports. Okay, so hopefully you'll get very good guidance from whichever insurance company you're with. And of course your agents and brokers can help you as well. Some will, I will. All right. So if you file more than 250 statements, the IRS is requiring you to file electronically. Imagine that, they don't want to get big, thick things of paper. Apply separately each individual return. And individual statements, they say by paper. You can do them electronically if you meet certain requirements, but most people are just going to mail them. Yes, sir.
With individual statements, aren't they supposed to be given to the employees because they have to turn in with the tax form when they file?
Yes, sir.
So if they're not given to the employees until the 1st of March, they can start to file this until after March.
That's right. So I probably shouldn't have mentioned the insurance company that I met with earlier. They say they're ready for them, but remember, this law is national. This impacts all insurance companies, big and small, and not all of them are prepared and ready to give this data out and to even file them for the small insured companies, right? So that's why there's this talk that it could potentially be delayed further. But that's the law, and that's the way it works. We found out, I think, 2 or 3 days before for those people who buy insurance through the marketplace, they extended the deadline. It was for January 1 effective dates. It originally was going to be December 15th. They bumped it to December 17th. So it's really not uncommon for, with the Affordable Care Act laws, to be changed at the last second. So this is kind of the guidance they've given on the relief on the penalties. If you make a good faith effort to provide these to your employees and to the IRS, and maybe there's an error made, they're not going to say that you never did them and they're going to get these big penalties per day. Relief is not available if you just completely ignore it and pretend it's going to go away. So, like I said, I would recommend moving down the road towards providing them. Look for guidance from your insurance companies and your consultants, and it's not too hard. You can get through it. Really. Yes.
What happens to districts that don't offer their employees insurance?
Okay, so as long as your district has fewer than 50 full-time equivalents, there is no penalty. There's no law requiring you to provide coverage. The penalty only comes into play for employers with 50 or more.
And there's no, I'm sorry, to be back on that,
Yeah.
there's no requirement for reporting for those districts.
Correct. I'm gonna check on that. I was thinking the ALs had to report one way or the other. Large employers, but yeah.
Well, like, we're very small, we only have 4.
Oh yeah, no reporting for non-ALs.
There's
Yeah.
nothing we have
Sorry.
to file to prove we're
Correct.
small then.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. All right. So the 6055 again is the part of the law that helps the IRS enforce the individual mandate. If it's an insured plan, the health insurance company is going to provide that for you, the section 6055. So again, small employer, insured plan, they've got you covered. If you're self-insured, then the plan sponsor, that means the company or the third-party administrator, you gotta find out who's doing it, will be providing that report. The government-sponsored programs, separate. Minimum essential coverage is, not sure if any of you have heard of that, but the law requires that employers provide at least a very certain, I think there's 10 parts to the minimum essential coverage plans, okay? So it doesn't impact, if you're just offering dental insurance or vision insurance, that's not what we're talking about. It's minimum essential coverage for medical. So it does not include HRAs, HSAs, on-site clinics, or Medicare Part D. Here's another, I like this slide because it kind of goes over for those that are more concerned about whether they are an AL or not. For a calendar year, an employer that employed on average at least 50 full-time and full-time equivalent employees during the prior calendar year. So just if you cross that threshold, and let's say in 2016, you don't have to comply until 2017. It's a look back. I've had employers, because of business things happen, they actually start off as an AL, then they're not an AL anymore. So they kind of get rid of some of the reporting that they had to do. Same definitions as the play rules. No delay for medium-sized employers. Aggregation or determining employer size, but each company reports under its own EIN. So I'm not sure if you guys remember, but when this whole pay or play penalty came out, maybe some of the operators of fast food businesses or maybe franchisees that had many, maybe had 12 restaurants, but they say, look, we're all small, we're all under 30 employees. It still goes by common ownership. So even though small businesses may independently be not an AL, because of common ownership, they probably are considered an AL. This is another recap of full-time employees, those working on average at least 30 hours of service per week, and full-time equivalent employees, the part-time employees working up to 120 hours per month. Somebody asked me about the crystal ball, about what I think, where this thing might be going or what might change. The definition of full-time employees is something that I think could likely be changed in the future to help employers that are struggling with it. As we mentioned, the medium-sized ALs, medium-sized businesses that had the 1-year delay, those don't have to start complying until this year. They still have to file under the report. Those are the medium-sized ALs, not the small ones, but the 50 to 100s. Now, I don't think this happens very much, but if you look at the very bottom, a company could not have laid off their entire work staff to get to, or laid off, a bunch of employees to get to that 1-year delay, or dramatically change how it pays for the insurance in order to get around that delay. So there was definitely there's some certifications that are done to make sure that they are truly eligible for that 1-year delay. And most businesses are. These are the forms that are required. You're talking insurance, and now we're talking IRS. Boy, you guys just had lunch, so I'm gonna do my best. Stay with me. I'll go on to something more exciting here in a minute. But here's the 2 forms. 1094C, that's for transmitting to the IRS, and then the 5C, that's what gets reported to about each employee. And if you look at this, so the final forms and instructions were issued by the IRS September 17th. This is part of the reason why this has been delayed. You know, insurance companies wait like in bated breath to get the final regs before they, you know, do any systems changes. They know how to, you know, gather the information. So, you know, if the IRS says, here's how we want the data, and it's mid-September, and they want an insurance company to provide a report in January, well, that's asking an aircraft carrier to turn a dime like super quick. So that could be part of the reason why you're seeing some of these delays as well. All right, PCORI. I know you probably can't read that. This was a very kind of a low-key part of the Affordable Care Act. Stands for Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute. So if you think about it, all the insurance companies across the country have different ways of managing health, especially things like diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, things of that nature. And what the Affordable Care Act did is it created this separate organization, and this is the first time I've seen this logo, by the way. I found that because they're collecting money from either the insurance company or the self-insured plans to research better ways to manage certain diseases. Okay, so it's kind of centralizing it all. So for plan years ending on or after October 2015, the PCORI, and then before October 1st, 2016, the PCORI fee is $2.17 by the average number of lives covered under the plan, or belly buttons. It's not per person, it's per person insured. And basically, the insurance companies and self-insured organizations have to pay this, and it goes to fund this organization. I've got another slide on it. Again, who pays? Everybody really pays. It's just the insurance companies, if you're fully insured, are paying this, or have built this fee into your premiums already, and they're sending it on your behalf. If you're partially self-funded, I heard EMI, they actually build the fee in to your premiums, and they send you a check, and then you send it off. And other, third parties do it similar ways. But ultimately, if you're self-funded, the employer is responsible for paying this. Okay, transitional reinsurance fees.
That was not in the packet.
This is not in the packet. I added this one late because I didn't think this presentation would be boring enough. So, so I threw something else in here, another fee. And this is actually important because I do reference some important deadlines later on about this. But this was designed to help stabilize the individual insured market. And insurance companies and self-insured employers have to pay into this program, and it's used by the federal government to offset losses from one insurance company to another. Okay. So who pays? It's like the PCORI, we're all paying for it, it's built into the rates. But if you're fully insured, then the insurance company has built this in and they're paying it on your behalf, just like the PCORI. If you're self-insured or you're partially self-insured, then you are responsible for paying this fee. It's possible that your third-party administrator is doing it for you. It's good to check. So the way this works, you'll see, I wanted to put down the historical part of this. In 2014, the annual contribution rate was $63 per enrollee per year, just baked into your rates. So if you were mad about your rate increases in 2014, you had one place to point to it. In 2015, the fee went down to $43. You should have all went to your insurance company and said, hey, it went down, so should my rates. And in 2016, it's actually down to $27. This fee is scheduled to go away after this year, 2016. So that means if you file in 2017, it would theoretically be your last time, if you're self-insured, you'd ever have to pay this fee. And again, your insurance company should reduce your rates. Because they don't have to pay it either. So there is good news.
Should.
All right. So in 2015, I'm highlighting this slide just because if you have a self-insured plan, partially self-funded or fully self-funded, by January 15th, what's the date? Actually, it's Monday. Today's the 15th, right? Yeah. So Monday, you have to pay this fee. Otherwise, you're late.
Monday's a holiday.
Okay, so I'm sure it's Tuesday, it's the last day. And you can pay it they do give you the option to pay that $44 fee in 2 parts. Pay most of it in January, pay a little bit in November. I would recommend our clients just to pay it and be done with it. All right. So, automatic enrollment. So, on November 2nd, President Obama signed into law a bipartisan budget act. Part of the negotiations was to repeal this. What is it? Well, this was going to require large employers, or very large employers, I think that it was 200 or more employees, would have to have been automatically enrolled unless they opt out. And the way we normally operate is people opt into insurance. They don't necessarily automatically get enrolled and have to do something special to get knocked out. Well, this was repealed, and that's not going to happen, which is probably a good thing. All right, so let's talk about grandmother. How many of you guys have heard that term, grandmother, grandfathered? Okay, so a grandfathered plan is a plan that was in place before the law was even inked, before March 23rd, 2010. A grandmothered plan is a plan that was put into place after March 23rd, but before December 31st of that year. And there were some rules. Those plans are supposed to be phased out, the grandmothered. And this is actually focused mostly on individual insurance. And those people who have kept their plans, that have grandmother plans, are very thankful they have them because they are about half of what a marketplace plan would cost today. We have many customers that have grandmother plans, and they're holding on to that as much as they can. They were able to keep them for an additional 2 years, and for, let's say, Blue Cross Blue Shield, for example, they're able to keep those plans until April of 2017. So that's providing them some relief from having to go onto the marketplace and getting, much more expensive plans. So it's left up to the insurance companies to decide if they want to extend these policies. And again, they're typically quite a bit less expensive than what you're seeing on the marketplace today. So while we're talking about individual plans, some employers for many years have been paying for individual plans out of company dollars. And I'm sure it's still going on today, but I think it's important to know that there was a rules set out that specifically addressed this, and that was done January 1st of 2014, so a couple of years ago. And what it did is it basically said you can't do it because employers were paying for it and then writing it off. Okay, and then there's another part of I'm not sure if any of you have heard of ERISA. Okay, so I'm sure there were court cases and whatnot, but they were saying, well, because the employer is paying for it, these are employer plans, even though it may just be one insured or 5 insureds, and they're not employer plans. They're not COBRA. You can't take them. You can take them with you because they're your own individual plans. They're not group. So it kind of they made a real bold statement. They said, in 2014, you cannot do this. The only way you can help an employee with something like this is you can gross them up. So if an employee or employer wants to help, and I don't, we don't recommend this, but let's say it's a mom and pop or whatnot, you can raise the salary enough to cover the taxes and cover the premiums, and then the individual pay it themselves. That's essentially what a gross up is.
Question.
Yeah.
We fall in that situation.
Okay.
For a small district. Our employee that we have insured through the marketplace, her income's right at a level that if it was any higher, it would disqualify her from assistance on her premium. So if we gross her up, then we lose the assistant.
Yeah.
Is there any way around it?
Nope. They've designed it that way. I mean, let's face it, the government is just this was a way to bypass taxes. It was a fringe benefit because you were paying it on their behalf. They don't want it to be a fringe benefit. It's not a true group plan, and therefore it needs to be taxed. So the only way to get that money to that person to pay that premium is to gross them up. Therefore, the employer has to pay more matching taxes, and the employee has to pay taxes on the amount you're paying him or her. And you're absolutely right. It could jump them into a threshold where their subsidies reduced or it's eliminated.
So if we pay the premium for her, then that money's ordinary income, so we're still grossing her up, right or wrong?
If you're doing this, I would recommend not doing it on Tuesday. And just saying, you know, look, we can't do this. We're gonna raise your salary. If it reduces the amount of subsidy you're gonna get, you know, you're sorry. It's not your fault, but that's the right way. It takes you out of danger from the IRS.
All right, one more question. The coverage that you get in the marketplace has typically deductibles and co-insurance that are higher than
Astronomical.
So, in order to help this employee in that respect, we've talked about funding an HSA. Can we do that? Or is the only way to just gross her up again and let her fund it?
You can actually do the HSA, but the important rule about an HSA is that you cannot discriminate. So if you fund a person's HSA, let's say $100 a month, you have to fund all employees who have an HSA qualified plan $100 a month. Or, again, that person becomes even more valuable and you gross them up so that he or she can put that money in the account, and that would be tax deductible to them.
Can you tell us what the limit is on income as far as getting a subsidy on the marketplace plan?
I can't, well, the threshold is about, it depends on lots of factors. It depends on age, number of dependents, you know, whether it's one person or whether it's four, and income. So there's many variables. I've got a computer that I can play with and show you. I even have the internet access code to do it here.
Do you sell market?
You all want that?
Do you sell marketplace plans?
Yes, we do.
You could provide that service
Oh, yeah,
for our
absolutely.
district?
Yeah.
Do you have other small districts? They just buy individual plans through the marketplace? You got
Not super common. Let's think about this for a minute. I mean, there was a lot of people that thought that with the Affordable Care Act that small groups would just disband the insurance and let everybody go buy their own coverage. Tons of people were talking about that. But what you're forgetting is that the organization has many benefits to providing insurance. Okay, you got the number one, the goodwill. You know, people that like to work for a company that provides benefit. It's tax deductible. Okay, you can do it. You can put in a cafeteria plan so that the employee's portion of the cost, let's say you're paying a percentage of it, that can be done pre-tax. So there's many benefits to offering group insurance versus grossing up. So, but sure, we have definitely had a couple of employers that have said, we want out. They didn't want to do it to begin with though. But we've had many, many more say, we want to now look at this. The other reason, I'll get to your question because I just want to throw one more thing on. Depending on where you live in the state, the individual plans have changed dramatically. Not only have the deductibles and the out-of-pockets gone up, but many of them have converted from PPOs to HMOs. all the insurance companies are trying to figure out ways to make this part of the business that's non-underwritten profitable. So you're seeing lots of narrow networks, HMO based. You know, on that topic, one quick time, are you familiar with the consolidation that's going on in the marketplace? Anthem is buying Cigna, Aetna's buying Humana, Centene's buying HealthNet, Meritain got shut down. They were a big player in the marketplace business. So where we used to have many companies, you know, trying to compete for business and keeping rates down, competition usually does that sort of thing. Now we have fewer companies, and that's not going to be good for the marketplace. So we've had small employers actually say, we want to put in a group plan because we want access to a PPO versus the HMOs that are available in the marketplace. Yes?
Okay. I just want you to repeat what you said about the contributing, if you contribute to an HSA, if we have dual plans, an
Okay.
HSA plan and a PPO plan, and we contribute to our HSA plan, would you clarify?
Yeah.
We have to contribute, if we contribute additionally, I'll say. We currently pay 100% of our employees'
Okay.
insurance for PPO and HSA, and then
Okay.
we offer them because the premium is lower, we offer them a contribution to help fund their HSA.
Okay.
So based on what you said, would you repeat it to make sure we're
Yes.
understanding what you said?
As long as you're contributing equally to those participants in the HSA, you're fine.
In the HSA?
In the HSA, you
Okay.
cannot contribute
I
to
don't have
someone
to
who's
worry
not
about
on it.
the-
But what I can't do is say, Chris is my camping buddy, I'm gonna put 200 in
Okay,
his,
right.
but you're not on that list, so you know, you're only getting 100.
Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with
Oh,
the PPO?
You can do it length of service, by length of service, tenure. You can do it, there are ways you can do it equally, but yet differently. How about that?
Okay.
Fairly.
But it doesn't have anything to do with the PPO? That's a
Nope.
whole separate issue? Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Good question. All right. All right, so lots of numbers. So some things did change this year. Out-of-pocket limits. So for those people who buy insurance on the marketplace, most of the plans that you saw have a $6,850 out-of-pocket limit, $13,700 for family. One of the important aspects of the Affordable Care Act that shouldn't be forgotten is that everything counts towards the out-of-pocket on these plans. Okay, not a grandfather plan, but an Affordable Care Act compliant plan. Deductibles, co-pays, all go towards that out-of-pocket limit. Okay, so that's important to remember. But they did go up. HSA contribution limits only went up for family members by $100. Again, I'm a firm believer that HSAs are a great way to buy insurance. You're paying as low a premium as possible, knowing what your out-of-pocket exposure is, and contributing just like you're doing towards each person's HSA to the extent that you possibly can, and giving he or she the ability to contribute on a tax-free basis. That's a great way to set up a plan.
Question, on the HSAs, are those, the plan for like your co-pays and whatnot that you can take with you if you leave? Because there's an HRA and an HSA, right?
There's an HSA
Uh-huh,
and there's an FSA.
okay,
So an FSA is a flexible spending account,
okay,
and those are the ones, that's the use it or lose it.
yeah, okay.
Now, the FSA limits used to be, I'm not even sure if they have them, they were huge. And, you know, when the Affordable Care Act came into play, they brought those limits way, 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 way down. So but they aren't even increasing those limits. Just real quick to go back to the pay or play penalty, you know, 2016, it's $2,160 per person. $3,240 is for those employers that provide insurance, but it's not meeting the affordability test. So you're offering coverage, but it's not affordable to the employees. And speaking of the affordability test, maybe you have heard of the 9.5 threshold. It goes up in 2016 to 9.66% of your, the safe harbor is your W-2 income. Yes?
Question. Our district, I have my own insurance, and the district is going to pay part of my insurance, or give me, not even not what you want to call it, to pay on my insurance. So I contacted our CPA to see how this was to be housed, and this was last year. They said that if we put it into my payroll, then I won't have to count it. So we'll say the number 300, then the no longer will be actually 300 that I'm counting. And they advised that the district pay for it. That they would literally write out a check and write it to the insurance company and this and that.
If you send me your email address, I'll send you a short white paper on that says you can't do that. I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure what kind of organization you're set up and, or, you know, how that's.
Can you repeat the question?
So the question was, can a district pay for an individual plan? So whether they offer group plan, do they offer group plan also?
No, we're in the process of looking into that.
Okay. So they don't have insurance, but they're paying for individual plans, just writing the checks out to, you know, the insurance company directly. And that's exactly what you cannot do. Now, it wasn't long ago that you still could do that. There was no real hard and fast rules. It was always considered a gray area. I've been doing this for 20 years. It's always been gray. But they made it absolutely perfectly clear you cannot, businesses cannot pay for individual insurance. As I understand it. I'm not a CPA either. So, but I'll send you what I have if you want it, and you can send it to them and they can decide.
What about an employee that turns age 65 and is still there? And they, the group insurance now, they qualify for,
Supplement. Medicare plus a supplement. Let me think about this for a minute. I don't know the exact whether that could be. We advise against it. We do advise employees when they turn 65 to know the differences between what they can get through a Medicare supplement versus what they get through the group plan, the advantage and disadvantage of both. But it can be construed as a incentive to get somebody off of the plan who's older. So when you think about how a small group is rated, age only, right? A person who's